Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Acharya Govinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nitai Gaura Haribo 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Swami Vishnupada Paramahansa Parivraj Gacharya Ashto Tarashata Shishimad Abhaya Charana Ravinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Shri Prabhupada Ki Janite Lila Vishnu Vishnupada Ashto Tarashata Shishimad Shri Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Thakur Prabhupada Ki Ananda Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki
Jai.
Shri Haridas Thakur Ki
Jai.
Goswami Ki
Jai.
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Radha Shivashari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki
Jai.
Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki
Jai.
Dhaam Ki
Jai.
Dhaam Ki
Jai.
Gamai ki, Jamuna
Jai.
Mani, Tulsi Devi ki, Bhakti
Jai.
ki,
Jai.
Sam Bhaktivinda ki,
Jai.
Sankirtan ki, Sri
Jai.
ki, Nitai Gaur Premanandi.
Hare Hare.
All glories to the assembled devotees. All
Hare Krishna.
glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare
All
Krishna.
glory to Sri Guru Shri Gauranga. Hare Krishna. Well, again, a pleasure to be with all of you today for this Srimad Bhagavatam. And today we're speaking on first canto, 8th chapter, text number 4. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
So we will read the verse because of the time factor. Anyway, I'll just say the verse and then we'll get into the class immediately. Santavyam asamunibir hattabandhun shucharpitan bhuteshu kalasya gatim darshayana pratikriyam. And the translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Citing the stringent laws of the Almighty and their reactions upon the living entities, Lord Krishna and the Munis began to pacify those who were shocked and affected. Purport. The stringent laws of nature under the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot be altered by any living entity. The living entities are eternally under the subjugation of the Almighty Lord. The Lord makes all laws and orders, and these laws and orders are generally called dharma or religion. No one can create any religious formula. Bona fide religion is to abide by the orders of the Lord. The Lord's orders are clearly declared in the Bhagavad Gita. Everyone should follow him only or his orders, and that will make all happy, both materially and spiritually. As long as we are in the material world, our duty is to follow the orders of the Lord. And if, by the grace of the Lord, we are liberated from the clutches of the material world, then in our liberated stage, we can also render transcendental loving service unto the Lord. Om Jnanatimirandasya Ganam Chana Shalakaya Chakshur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitami Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakada Mayam Darati Shva Parantikam Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shrivadi
That is there. That is your name. That has to be there.
Anya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Ritika Radha Shiva Shari Gaur Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So this is I stopped here because I wanted to speak about this particular part of the verse. And so for this first part, the stringent laws of nature under the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Maya is known to be Chayeva, in Brahma Samhita, a shadow. So it's not that the Western concept is that God is absorbed in this material world, totally, he's just fixed on, everything, and make sure you get your car and you get your house and you get this and that. Of course, people in other countries, they won't get that. So it's kind of foolish to think, just like people say, God bless America or God bless this country or that country. And why should he bless one and not another? And then people think that God's duty is we should be engaging him like he doesn't have anything to do. And of course, many concepts of the Supreme or God are pretty much on have that idea that if he's just listening to harp and trumpet concerts by a bunch of angelic people. And so naturally, if I were sitting around all day listening to harp concerts, I would probably want somebody to engage me in another activity. So therefore, we're so fortunate to have this Krishna consciousness movement. But Srila Prabhupada says in the purport, if you want to have this Krishna consciousness movement, if you want to be part of it, if you want to offer transcendental loving service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as he says, unto the Lord, you must be in the liberated stage. He says, then in our liberated stage, we can render. That means that our transcendental, our service to the Lord right now is under the jurisdiction of Shri Guru and the Vaishnavas. And this will come up later in the purport. So, but the point I wanted to make here, the stringent laws of nature under the order, not that this is what Krishna is engaged in. And even sometimes as devotees, we forget this. And we're wondering, why is Krishna doing this? Why, as if, he's scrambling around in the material world, trying to make things go right for us. And he is trying to make things go right for us. And Srila Prabhupada gives the perfect solution. We follow the orders of the Lord. Dharman Sakshad Bhagavat Pranitam. Without doing so, according to Yamaraj, there is no spirituality, there is no religion, there is no dharma. And but it's interesting, Prabhupada says, the orders of the Lord are clearly declared in the Bhagavad Gita. Many devotees nowadays, they make all kinds of references to Manu Samhita, which certainly is a bona fide scripture, but definitely, if you study all the laws of Manu, it would be very difficult to follow them in this age. Even the orders of Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, for most devotees, to follow all of those orders, of course, one of my favorite verses, Adveshta Sarvabhutanam, give up the envy toward all living entities. That requires a whole lifetime just to do that one instruction. And then, then Maitri Karuna, then you can have friendship with the living entities, and then you can be compassionate. Otherwise, if there's no real understanding that my duty is to, or seeing everyone, samasarvashu bhuteshu, as Krishna says later in Bhagavad Gita, seeing everyone on an equal platform as friends, because they're all family members. We generally, of course, now, even Kali Yuga, family members, just like this particular verse, is based on people lamenting about their family members, and Krishna and the sages giving comfort. So, family members should be very dear to us. And if we understand that everyone is part of Krishna's family, then we have no other recourse other than to, see them as friends, and then we can feel compassion. Just like it's very common that practically any devotee will feel some special duty to, preach to their parents, preach to their brother, preach to their sister, more than any other living entity. Although on the philosophical platform, there may be thousands of millions of people that are more apt or more are ready to receive Krishna consciousness. So this attraction, and I'll speak a little bit about that later on, this attraction is very strong. So if we see it in the proper light, that everyone is my family member, then we can actually do things properly. So Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Maya Dakshena Prakriti Suyate Sa Characharam, that Hetunanina Kunteya Jagat Viparivartate, that this whole material world is going on under my supervision. But supervision, I'm just making a lot of emphasis, because even sometimes as devotees, we have a sentimental concept that Krishna is just there waiting to, for my next communication. What do I need? What does he need to adjust in my life so that I can be materially happy and spiritually happy? But as the saying goes, you can't have your cake and eat it too. Otherwise, first we have to do the preliminary things. And that preliminary thing is study this Bhagavad Gita, not the Manu Samhita, not some far out scripture. I remember one time in Mayapur during the festival, and many devotees were giving seminars, and all these things, Dasamulya, and this and that, and so many different things. But I looked over there wasn't one person giving a seminar on Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam. It was like all these, and that's nice. It's nice to get those things. But first we have to make sure that the devotees understand the Bhagavad Gita, because even without understanding Bhagavad Gita, just like in Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is further explaining or expanding the Srimad Bhagavatam, especially in terms of relationships between devotees and preaching, then we see, if you study it, you'll see so many quotes from Bhagavad Gita. And generally, Krishnadas Kaviraj, he quotes Bhagavad Gita, then he goes into the Bhagavatam quotes. So it's such an important thing, the Bhagavad Gita. And, so many times, I mean, one of the main questions I get is, how do I know what Krishna wants? And I always say, well, try Bhagavad Gita. Try, of course, what Krishna specifically wants us to do in one particular moment of our life. That is the duty of the Guru and the Vaishnavas, or the Diksha Guru, Shiksha Guru, to guide us in a particular moment according to specific instructions that may be more applicable to our life in that moment. But it's not so easy to figure that out on one's own. But generally speaking, Bhagavad Gita, as Srila Prabhupada said many times, Bhagavad Gita is a basic scripture. And for us, it's so elevated that just demonstrates the fallen condition that we live in, that we cannot even understand. Arjuna, I made this point several times, Arjuna understood Bhagavad Gita in 45 minutes, and he was ready to go. He was ready to follow all of Krishna's orders. That shows how qualified he was. Someone may think, oh, Arjuna's a Kshatriya, but he's a Raja Rishi. And because he's a pure devotee, Krishna, he could very easily understand and put into practice the orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So therefore, in the last thing that I read, devotional service, sometimes Prabhupada said, what is the difficulty in devotional service? You just obey Krishna. But come to that point, because when you just obey Krishna, then you're coming onto the liberated stage, and you can render transcendental loving service, meaning transcendental loving service right now our service may be transcendental because it's coming from Shri Guru, it's coming from the Vaishnavas, but it may not be so loving. It may be out of duty. It may be out of fear of death or fear of suffering. It may be out of necessity. I want this, I want that. It may be out of curiosity. It may be out of looking for the absolute truth on the Gyan platform. So it may not be such a loving service. So here when Prabhupada says loving service, it means, that love begins to really manifest when one comes to the platform of Madhyam Adhikari. So I'll go on a little farther in the verse. In our material stage, we can see neither ourselves nor the Lord for want of spiritual vision. But when we are liberated from material affection and are situated in our original spiritual form, we can see both ourselves and the Lord face to face. So this is of course, there's a beautiful verse which is Srila Prabhupada, which is given in the Bhagavatam, and Srila Prabhupada took this set of verses, Shinvatam Swakata, starting with Shinvatam Swakata Krishna and ending with Vidyate Hridaya Grantis, and put them in the purport of the first verse of the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So the last verse, Vidyate Hridaya Grantis, this is the specific thing that's happening here. That the heart has so many Hridaya Grantis, so many knots, that you have to go into, just like cutting a knot, you have to pierce it. Chidyante sarvasamshaya. And by cutting that knot, all the doubts that we have about our existence will go away. Kshiyante chasya karmani. And the chain or the continuum of fruitive activities will be stopped. And then drishta eva manishvare. And then at that point, you can see evatma, you can see yourself, and Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport, seeing oneself properly means that you also see the Supersoul, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because you can't see yourself properly and fully unless you see the Supreme Personality of God. So this is a very, very important thing that we have to do. I think it would be good to mute the microphone. I was hearing some background there. So, so this is very beautiful thing. We can see ourselves and the Lord face to face. Mukti means to be reinstated in one's original spiritual status after giving up the material conception of life. Therefore, all human life is specifically meant for qualifying ourselves for this spiritual liberty. Now, this is Srila Prabhupada is giving us the impetus to come to the platform. Just like Sri Prahlad Maharaj, he said that in his instructions to his friends, Sukham Aindriyakam Daitya, Deha Yogena Dehinam. He said, my dear friends, the happiness that comes from the senses, which is just due to the fact of having a body, Deha Yogena. Of course, sometimes I use this verse to say, Deha Yoga, just like we're doing Bhakti Yoga. Well, hopefully we're doing Bhakti Yoga, or at least Dasya Yoga, the yoga of service, or the yoga of Bhakti. So Deha Yoga, most people are doing Deha Yoga, the yoga of taking care of the body. But here it means Deha Yogena, those who have this material body, Dehinam. And then Prahlad says, Sarvata Labdyate Daivad. This is coming from a superior arrangement. this happiness is coming from a superior arrangement, and also yata dukkam ayatnaha, that this is also, and your suffering will also come from the same source. Therefore, don't be too much absorbed in these things. What should we be absorbed in? As Sri Narada Muni instructed Vyasadeva, that tasyaiva heto prayateta gopido na labhyate yad brahmatam upadyada. You should be looking for that thing which you can't find in the material world. Otherwise, we're all wandering, brahmata, we're all wandering in the material world, trying to find the same thing. What are we looking for? We're looking for that thing which we can't find in this world, and we keep trying to find it where it doesn't exist. We try to find it in this body and that body, but the Narada Muni says, try to find that thing, Golokera Premadan, Harinam Sankirtan, that comes from the spiritual world, the whole, in our case specifically, the holy name of the Lord. Talabhyate dukkavad anyata sukham. Because this happiness and distress that we find in this material world, kalena sarvatra, gabhir ramhasa, it comes about automatically. It doesn't, it will happen automatically. And Srila Prabhupada made this point again and again. Don't think that you're creating happiness, just like no one is trying to create distress. Well, of course, there is a certain section of society nowadays that tries to actually create, because they're so frustrated trying to squeeze pleasure out of the senses and the mind, and they can't get any more. Therefore, there are people who actually torture themselves, not like the yogis in India who would do the austerities of trying to be free from the body by piercing the body. Of course, that's not the process recommended for us, but not like them. They actually inflict pain because they can't find any more pleasure in the supposed sources of pleasure of this material world, and therefore they're looking for pleasure somewhere else. So this is a very unfortunate situation and condition of material existence. So the point is that we have to come to this liberated stage, liberated from material affection and in our original spiritual form. So therefore, human life is specifically meant for qualifying ourselves for this spiritual liberty. Unfortunately, under the influence of the illusory material energy, we accept this spot life of only a few years as our permanent existence, and thus become illusioned by possessing so-called home, country, home, land, children, wife, community, etc., which are false representations created by Maya. So the attachment to home, country, land, aho grihakshetra sutapta vitaya. And this is the same thing that was taught by Rishabdev, that these things, aho, when you, as we were discussing, please mute the microphone. So these things, when you, where do they come from? Just what I just spoke, another verse from the Bhagavad, Hridaya Granthi, the Hridaya Granthi. And what is the cause of that? That pumsa striya, mituni bhava metam. The cause is that we come together, man and woman. Of course, nowadays, man, woman, woman, man, animal. There's so many different permutations and mutations of what's naturally supposed to be there. But even what's naturally supposed to be there, Aho griha kshetra sutapta vitar. What does it happens? Aho griha. Once you married, then you need a home. Griha kshetra. Then you need a field of activities. You need something to do. Sutta apta. Then there are children. Then children come, and that's the wanted part. Or sometimes it's not even wanted in Kali Yuga. But then the not so wanted part, means new relatives. I've got a father-in-law, mother-in-law, all these in-laws that generally think I'm not suitable for my husband or my wife, depending on which one I am the opposite of. And then vitai, you need money. And modern society forces everyone to look for money. And therefore Brahmins cannot be Brahmins because they have to try to make money. And because they're not good at making money, they have to struggle like anything just to get by. And Shudras, they're also not good at making money, so they have to struggle. And Kshatriyas, who are supposed to be protecting people, they're more interested in getting money and protecting those who give them money. And so then the Brahmins are serving the illicit desires of power-hungry persons. So the whole society is topsy-turvy. The whole society is upside down. So then Srila Prabhupada says, and under the dictation of Maya, we fight with one another to protect these false possessions. All the time in politics, people are fearful that some politicians will involve us in some conflict, either internal conflict or external conflict, and make life very fearful. By cultivating spiritual knowledge, we can realize we have nothing to do with all this material paraphernalia. Then at once we become free from material attachments. This clearing of the misgivings of material existence at once takes place by the association of the Lord's devotees, who are able to inject the transcendental sound into the depths of the bewildered heart, and thus make one practically liberated from all lamentation and illusion. Well, this is a very beautiful statement by Srila Prabhupada, that in the second canto of the Bhagavatam, there's two beautiful verses that speak about this. Of course, there's a famous verse by Kapila Dev, that Satam prasangam mama virya sambido bhavanti karna rasayana kata, that when you associate with devotees, and especially satam prasangam, when you associate with these devotees, prasangam means not just occasionally, but you look for, you aspire, you want that association. Then bhavanti hritkarna rasayana kata, then the sound vibration goes into the ears and penetrates into the heart. So there's two verses in the 8th chapter of the second canto that in the beginning that I always like. Shinvatam shradhaya nityam grinatascha svatashtitam. When one is very sincere about hearing from the Supreme Personality of Godhead and applies that hearing, grinatascha svatashtitam, applies that hearing to activities. Otherwise, we're very sincere and we're very serious. Sincere means I hear, I understand, and serious means I put that into practice. Jnana vijnana. Then kalena nati dirghena. Then in a very short time. Sometimes we see in the Bhagavatam or in Shastras that kalena nati dirghena. That it says the opposite. It says after not a very long time. To emphasizing it can be a very short time. So Bhagavan Rishate Hridi, that I will, that the Supreme Personality of Godhead becomes manifest in my heart. And how does that happen? Pravishtakarna randrena. When we allow this transcendental sound vibration to enter into our ears very carefully, swanam bhavam saroruham, And then that wonderful, beautiful spiritual relationship that I eternally have with the Supreme Personality of Godhead unfolds like a lotus flower within my heart. And I'm sitting there with the Lord. And then, Dunoti Shalilam Krishna, Dunote Shalinam Krishna, then the misgivings of material existence are washed away, just like the autumn rain. So this is the beauty, that if one injects transcendental sound into the depths of the bewildered, such a beautiful statement, into the heart. That summary, that is a summary of the pacifying measures for those affected by the reaction of the stringent laws exhibited in the form of birth, death, old age, and disease, which are insoluble factors of material existence. Victims of war, namely family members of the Kurus, were lamenting the problems of death, and the Lord pacified them on the basis of knowledge. So, how do we solve this problem? This is addressed later on in the same chapter, and I'm going to look up the verse because I never memorized it. So, and sometimes I memorize it and it goes away anyway, especially as we get older. So in the 41st verse of this same chapter is a beautiful prayer by Queen Kunti, which sometimes can be a little bewildering. Ata vishvesha vishatman vishvamurte swakeshu me snena pasham imam chindi didham bandushu vishnishu. O Lord of the universe, soul of the universe, O personality and the form of the universe, please therefore sever my ties of affection for my kinsmen, the Pandavas and the Vrishnis. So such a beautiful verse. Queen Kunti addresses Krishna three ways. Vishvesha, Vishva Isha, you are the Lord of the universe. Vishvatman, you are the soul of the universe. And Vishvamurti, you are the manifestation of the universe. Otherwise, anything that has to do with material, the material world, including affection, you're the Lord of that. And because you're the Lord of that, Sneha Pasham Chindi, cut these ropes of affection, Sneha. We don't want to cut the ropes of affection. That's what we've already done. We cut the ropes of affection to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So she's saying, I don't want to lament for my family members. I don't want to favor the Pandavas, and I don't want to just favor the Vrishnis. So therefore, let me see them as devotees, as your devotees. Let me see everyone as your devotee. Let me have Vishva, let me have universal vision, so that this dridham, this very strong bond of material affection, can be cut by your grace. And what is that grace? Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita. That's how we cut it. And of course, going back to what Srila Prabhupada said in the purport, that this means that one has to associate with devotees. Association with devotees is so important. Therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said there are 5 essential things, and these are of all the different aspects of devotional service, these 5 are the most important. And the first one, sadhu sangha. The first one is to associate with devotees. Then nama kirtan. And by that association, in this age, this is given by Rupa Goswami in this age, then the result will be that sadhu sangha, nama kirtan. You will be able to chant the holy name by associating with Vaishnavas, and by chanting the holy name, Bhagavata Shravana, you will be able to understand the Bhagavatam, and also by understanding the Bhagavatam, you will be able to associate better with the devotees in the proper way. not in a partial way or in a self-interested way, but you'll be able to associate with devotees in a very wonderful spiritual way. So this is, and Srila Prabhupada mentions in the purport to that wonderful verse 1841, he says the perfect example of this is the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. The 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, as Srinivasacharya glorifies them, saying, Kvaktatornamashe Shamandalapati Shrinim Sada Tuchavat, that they gave up everything, and especially Ashesha Mandalapati Shrinim. They gave up, most of us are aspiring for what they gave up. We want a better home, a more comfortable situation. They gave all that up. Ashesha Mandalapati Shrenim. They were situated in the aristocratic circles of society, wealth, reputation as Brahmins. They were born in Saraswata Brahmin family. They were considered the best of the Brahmins. But they gave that up. Sada Tuchavat. Srila Prabhupada as something Tuchavat, insignificant. And of course, in one place, Srila Prabhupada, well, maybe more than one place I remember, Srila Prabhupada says, just like going to the bathroom, we have no trouble giving it up. We're not saying, oh no, I lost part of my body. What am I going to do? No, we give it up. And what did they do? Buddha Dina Ganesha Kao Karuneya. Kaupina Kantashvito. They feeling compassion, just like Prahlad Maharaj. He said, Shoche Tato, Vimukha Chetasa, that these people that I cannot they turn their back to Krishna. I cannot just forget about them, even though I'm personally, Magna Chitao. I'm Gayamriti. I'm absorbed in hearing the beautiful pastimes of the Lord. And I could be absorbed like that, just like Srila Prabhupada. He could have stayed in Vrindavan. Everyone encouraged him to do it. But he was concerned like this, that these poor people suffering in the material world. And therefore the 6 Goswamis gave up everything and wore a loincloth and an old quilt, just like when Sanatana Goswami, who had just come from his opulent position, arrived to see Lord Chaitanya with a beautiful, nice chadar. And Lord Chaitanya was looking at the chadar, like, this is, you're coming to me to be a renunciant and you have this beautiful chadar. So then he went out and found a poor man with an old chadar, kanta, kanta ashrita. And he took that old, he said, would you like this nice, I don't know if it was silk or cotton or wool, would you like this nice chadar? And give me your chadar. And the man was like, incredulous. But he thought, well, of course. And then Sanatana Goswami came back with that chadar, and Mahaprabhu was very happy. But how did they do this? How can we do this? This is the next question. Kopi bhava rasamritaddi lahari kalola magno muhur, that we become absorbed in the pastimes of Shri Radha and Krishna in Vrindavan, and all the wonderful teachings of the Bhagavatam, all these things. They bring us to the point of rasamritabdi lahari kalola, to play in the waves of the ocean of transcendental loving mellows of devotional service. Just like most devotees, most people like to go to the beach and play in the waves. So we go to the beach of the spiritual world. We come out of the water of material existence and we play in the spiritual waters of the transcendental loving service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then we become very happy. So anyway, there are many things we can say about this, but the point is that We need to pray like Queen Kunti. This material affection is so strong. Let me, it's not like we think, oh, my children, no, they're just Maya. No, we don't think like that. But we think, just thinking that they're my children because they came from my body, or that, they're part of my family. This part we should philosophically understand. This can cause us to have improper or limited vision. Therefore, let me give up that material side of it and see them as servants of the Lord. And it's my duty to increase their devotional service. Then that same affection becomes spiritualized and becomes very wonderful and transports us. Or as Srila Prabhupada says so beautifully, I just love what Srila Prabhupada put there, that I'm just going to repeat it again, it's so beautiful. The devotees of the Lord who are able to inject the transcendental sound into the depths of the bewildered heart. So that's our duty. We go out on Sankirtan, preaching, lectures, internet preaching, whatever, or helping or supporting the preaching. We should all be involved in this Sankirtan movement to bring the fallen conditions, bewildered souls, because that will help us to become unbewildered. That will help us to become sane. By when you deal with people, either directly or indirectly, by supporting the preachers or being a preacher, when you do that, you get special mercy from Lord Chaitanya and from Srila Prabhupada. So we all have to be connected to the Sankirtan movement. So anyway, I've overpassed the time allotted for this class, so I'll stop here. And if I'm allowed, I will ask for a few questions. I have to ask the powers that be if I can do that.
Yes, Maharaj, you can get some questions. Vivi Damaraj Swami is here, so Maharaj, would you like to ask something?
Yeah, thank you. I was just taking profuse notes, and I was very enlivened that the Maharaj quoted two verses that I have on my cards. The one from the second canto, 8th chapter, verses 4 and 5, and they do go together very beautifully. The very poetic rendering, I think that's number 5, and then also the general rule that by hearing we get the Lord enters our heart in a short time. It doesn't take that long if we take the matter very seriously. And how to take our chanting of japa very seriously, how to take hearing these classes very seriously. I think that's something that we should all contemplate. Other than that, I don't have any particularly. I mean, I could if I start thinking about it. We don't have time, so I don't have at this time. I don't have any particular philosophical question. Thank you for the opportunity, anyway.
Anyone else that has a question or comment or, rotten tomatoes? Of course, that's the good thing about internet preaching, that nobody can throw a rotten tomato. Of course, they can throw in a verbal rotten tomato.
Okay.
It seems like, here's something. The Goswamis were Nitya Siddhas and already attained perfect realization of the Lord. So one can say that it's easy for us, I think he meant to say easy for them to renounce, but what about us? Yes, that's a common flaw. That's why the Lord Chaitanya arranged for the 6 Goswamis to undergo hardships. They had to undergo extreme hardships, each one of them in different ways. Rupa and Sanatan, they were subjected to the Muslim rule and forced. They were forced to do that. It's not that they wanted to do it, not that they were looking for employment, but the Nawab said, no, he was looking for someone who could help control the Hindus, the ones who weren't Muslims. And so someone said, well, that would be Rupa and Sanatan, of course, their original names. And so he called for them and he said, I want you to control these people. And they said, no. They said, well, if you don't, I will give them such a hard time. So they were forced. So yes, the Goswamis did have, but they were put into, and just like Arjuna was put into Yoga Maya just to be anguished, to be, he couldn't understand. He was bewildered. And so Krishna puts it, just like Srila Prabhupada, Krishna put Srila Prabhupada through so many difficulties. His family life, his wife wasn't very interested, his children weren't very interested in Krishna consciousness, and yet he had to do his family duty when he had an order from the topmost pure devotee of that time to preach. And he was put into a very difficult situation, much more difficult than we could even imagine, and to come to the West and under the conditions that he came. So we can see that, okay, yes, a topmost pure devotee, if they were in our situation, it would be very easy for them. But Krishna puts them in an equally difficult situation to show how to navigate the material energy. So we should never think like that, because that's basically the Western religious thought, that God put me into this mess, and so he should, he has to give me some easy way out. And we shouldn't use that to justify our Maya. Well, 6 Goswamis, they came from the spiritual world, they're Nitya Siddhas. Well, they can do these things, but this is not for me. I'm supposed to be in Maya, or at least for the next 30 years, then I can think differently. And so this is the foolishness of material consciousness. Any other question or comment?
On that same topic, Maharaj, sometimes, we of course we know that we're not doing everything properly as far as devotional service is concerned, but how much should we kind of beat up on ourselves? Because if we actually beat up on ourselves too much, then we could become frustrated in the practice of devotional service. So we must have some balance in the way we see our discrepancies.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. Of course, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, in the morning you beat yourself 100 times with a broomstick, and at night, I can't remember which was which, and at night 100 times with shoes. So he definitely recommended a little bit of beating is good. But I was just speaking about this yesterday in a class, that we have the right to have a certain degree of comfort that will allow us to perform devotional service. But the fruit of that comfort should not be pleasing the senses or pleasing the mind. It should be enabling me to have the conditions that I need according to my conditional life to be able to serve Krishna more. Otherwise, if the seeking comfort takes me away from devotional service, then yes, I need to do some beating. But this, and I gave the example of Srila Prabhupada. He also had certain conditions he required, and he's a, Mukta Purusha. He's a liberated soul. He's a topmost pure devotee, but he had to have silence when he was translating. One of my godbrothers told me when he was in London, he saw the window to Srila Prabhupada's room. So he went right under the window and he started chanting japa very loud, thinking, oh, Prabhupada will hear me and he'll bless my chanting. So Prabhupada opened the window. It was, Bhaktivedanta manner. And Prabhupada said, there are so many places to chant, you know. And so he understood. He didn't get what he bargained for. And so Prabhupada needed quiet. Prabhupada was very disturbed when a door would slam or when some unwanted loud noise. You know. So even what to speak of us, we according to our conditioned nature, or according to what, you know, to the mental condition we need to perform devotional service, we may need certain types of comfort. And that's not bad. But, you know, just like a king needs a palace, or, you know, a Brahmin needs shastras and certain conditions under which they can study the shastra. So we should consider that degree of comfort or facility in terms of our devotional service, not in terms of the demands of the senses and the mind. Otherwise, a balance. Devotional service is about balance. Okay. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, of course, he very much emphasized that we have to take care, and people in general especially, they have to take care of social needs, psychological needs, spiritual needs, and physical needs. So he said these things are, you know, they have to be there, and to have the balance and to have the condition under which we can surrender more to Krishna. But of course, Shukadev Goswami said, Yasyaham anugrinami harishe taddanam shanai, that when Krishna especially favors someone, otherwise when he sees that you really want to be a devotee, you're engaged in devotional service, but there's some attachment that's keeping you from surrendering more, then he takes it away. And the result is tato dhanam chajat yasya swajana dukkha dukhitam. The result is that even your family members, they say, oh, this guy is poor and miserable. Yeah, you know, he's not providing us any shelter. Let's forget about him. Then you don't even, your family, your friends, they reject you. He's a failure. He's just dysfunctional. And then you have to depend on Krishna. So that also will come. So as one devotee said to me, if you want to surrender to Krishna, be prepared to be raked over the coals. So sometimes, you know, sometimes Krishna will push us beyond our level of comfort, and we always, to make spiritual advancement, we have to go beyond the comfort zone.
Thank you, Maharaj, for a very nice answer on that question. Does anyone else have any questions? I always remember that Bhajanarayan Swami, that before he was Swami, he said, if you want to pay attention in class, just think of 3 questions that you're going to ask. And so that will keep you awake. And that means everyone will have a set of questions. So I don't know if anyone else, because we have 8 people watching on YouTube and we have 23 here presently. So
also, some people have to go to work. Some people have to take prasadam.
Maharaj, I have a question.
All right.
Many people, some devotees saying that because there's so many Prabhupada's instructions, every time I associate with devotee, I become more confused about bhakti. So it's better just read the books. No need to associate too much because I will get confused. What is your comment?
Well, you have to associate with devotees that understand properly the philosophy. You know, some devotees just want to get together and have pizza, and so that's not a bad idea. But then that should be after hearing about Krishna, not that just we get together for pizza and that's association. That's a common interest in a certain type of prasadam, but it's not the type of association that Srila Prabhupada is in the scriptures are advising is association with more advanced devotees. Tuliyama lavanapi, that type of association, even lava, even a fraction of a second, that takes us beyond liberation and beyond what is it? Tuliyama navanapi naswargam napunar bhavam, takes us beyond desire for heavenly existence or even liberation. So that's the type of association we want. And as far as just reading the books, we should always read the books, but we have to make sure we're understanding properly. We're not selecting out of Prabhupada's books the parts that I like and skipping over the parts that require me to surrender more.
Thank you very much, man.
That's my recommendation. And I agree that, that's why I say Vrindavan is wonderful, but it's also the most dangerous place for philosophical variety, of a very dangerous kind. So many different, Babajis and sadhus, and who have all kinds of different takes on devotional service. They're much more dangerous than, in one sense, than the Mayavadis, because when you see a Mayavadi, if you're a devotee, you immediately understand this is Maya. But when you hear all these different varieties of understandings of how to worship Krishna in the improper way, then it becomes confusing, because these people are learned. Generally, they have some understanding, they speak some Shastra. There was one who's following in the example of Prabhupada. I won't mention his name. He could quote any scripture from memory. Every scripture he quoted, he would give the page number, because he didn't have computer. He would give the page number and the line number, and of the scripture that he had, and he'd say on page this, he would quote. But then when he finished that, he would go and associate with his gopi girlfriends. So that's not the kind of hearing we want to do. Therefore, when we go to Vrindavan, Srila Prabhupada, I was there, 1976. We went to the class, and there was only there were hundreds of devotees, like 600-700 devotees there. And, there was only like 60 devotees in the class. And Prabhupada said, where is everyone? Oh, Prabhupada, they went on some parikrams. And Prabhupada said, I have made this temple so that you come and hear. So we should go and hear from that place that Srila Prabhupada established, and hear what Srila Prabhupada established it for. Not for exploring the outer realms of supposed bhakti.
Mm. Yeah, so you say, Maharaj, more or less that Maya comes in the form of bhakti also.
No, Maya comes in the form of supposed bhakti.
Yeah.
Or Maya can come, there may be some bona fide Vaishnavas, but if they're not in the line of Srila Prabhupada, then they will give us something that Srila Prabhupada didn't give us. And he had a reason for not giving it to us. And even though there may be one or two people that may be ready for a more advanced level of devotional service, as Rupa Goswami says, they keep it to themselves. That's something that it's something internal that they're feeling, but externally they behave according to the instructions of Sri Guru and Gauranga.
Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
So, if there's no more questions, I again thank all of you very much for your attention. And
I see we have a raised hand. If
oh, there it is. Yeah, there's a raise. Oh, I see that. Yes. Okay. Taruna Radha Devidasi. Yes, I think you have your microphone muted. Okay.
I'm sorry. Hare Krishna Gurudeva, please accept my humble obeisances. Could I ask, please, you explain more about material happiness? You said yesterday that Srila Prabhupada said that it is like stool business, and today you said that it is coming itself. It is not needed to make something that it will be coming. Can you explain more? Maybe I can ask about seminar for 3 gunas of material nature. Thank you very much.
Just for the present audience that didn't hear my class yesterday, I was giving the example Srila Prabhupada gave. He said, just as a man takes his dog and has to wait on the dog to pass stool, that in this, Prabhupada said, in the same way, Krishna, just like we're Krishna's dog, we're supposed to be his servant, but when we're not serving him because we're engaged in the stool business of the material world, then he's waiting. He's waiting for eons. He's waiting for so much time for us to come around. So that's like a general statement that everything in the material world, whether it be material happiness or material distress, is equally unpalatable for one who is engaged in pure devotional service. So for a pure devotee, all of these things, both material happiness, and of course this is there again and again, dukeshvanudvigna mana sukeshu vigitas priyaha vita ragabhaya krodha stitadir munu uchate, that both material happiness and material distress, the anxiety of material distress and the elation of material happiness, for a stitadir muni, for a devotee, someone who's really situated in spiritual life, it's the same. We want to vita, we want to give it up, this vita raga, this attachment, anger, and fear. We want to give these things up. Does that answer your question?
Yes, Gurudev, thank you very much. And can I ask about maybe one day it is possible to have seminar for 3 gunas of material nature? Thank you very much.
Yes, it's possible. We all have to transcend material nature, as Srila Prabhupada says in this purport. So, if there are no more questions, we can stop here. Again, thank you all very much for your kind attention, and may Srila Prabhupada bless all of us with increased devotional service at every moment.
We want to thank you, Maharaj, for taking your time.
Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai.
Hare Krishna. Thank you again for giving us your time and your inspiration. We appreciate every second of it. Thank you very much.
Haribo.
Haribo. So stop this recording here.